Hey, it says solve the equation using the quadratic formula, which is stated here. This is one of those formulas you'll need to remember for the test. In order for us to use the quadratic formula, the equation has to be solved, or in this form, it has to be set equal to 0. And so I'm going to first move the 6x to the left side and move the 3 to the left side by just subtracting 6x and subtracting 3 from both sides. This will turn the equation into 10x squared minus 6x minus 3 is equal to 0. Again, I could have moved the 10x squared to the right side. That would have probably been just fine. I just like to keep the x squared leading coefficient positive. It's not as critical that we do that when we're using the quadratic formula. It's very important that we do that when we use factoring. So just as a general rule, I like to keep the leading coefficient of the square term positive. All right, now identify A, B, and C. A is 10, B is negative 6, and C is negative 3. We're just going to pop those guys right into the formula here. So we get x is equal to negative b. All right, negative b. Well, b is negative 6. So there's my negative b. It's going to end up being a positive 6. Plus or minus the square root. B squared. Well, okay, negative 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 10, times c, which is negative 3. That whole thing is divided by 2a, so that's 2 times 10. Now we just have a little cleaning up to do here, so let's do that. Negative of a negative 6 is 6, plus or minus the square root. Negative 6 squared would be 36. Now I've got two negatives here, so it's going to be 4 times 10 is 40, and 40 times 3 is 120, but it'll be a plus 120, right, because of the two negatives. All right, and then in the denominator, we just have 20. So we have 6 plus or minus the square root of, well, 120 plus 36 would be 156 over 20. All right, now, unfortunately, 156 is not a perfect square, but we want to simplify that. If we can, simplify that radical, and that means we've got to look for perfect square factors of 156. Now, one way to do that is just to use the prime factorization. So let me do that over on the side here. So we have 156, right? And I'm going to break that down as 2 times 78. I just know I can divide 156. I can divide that by 2 because it ends in an even number. All right, so 156 divided by 2, just double checking my arithmetic, is 78. I can divide 78 by 2 as well, and I get 39. Now 39, I could write that as 3 times 13. Now I've got all the prime factors there, and now I'm just looking for 2 of a kind. Those guys are 2 of a kind. So what this means is that I could write this as 6 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 39, because the 2 times 2 together gives me that perfect square 4, and then 4 times 39 is 156. It's kind of a brute force way to do it. Another way to do it is just say, okay, I got 156. I'm going to divide this by the first perfect square I can think of. Well, 156 divided by the first perfect square I could think of would be 4. And, of course, 4 times 39 would give me 156. So there's a brute force way to do it like this, or just sort of guessing trial and error with some perfect square factors. All right, and now I'm going to take the square root of 4 on the outside. So the square root of 4 comes out as 2. Still got the square root of 39 underneath that radical. All right, so just to be clear, that this came outside the radical as 2. And then running out of space here, so now I've got to see if I can simplify this, because I've got a 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 39 over 20. I'm looking for common factors. So I'm looking at this this, and this. They all have a 2 in common. So I could divide all the terms in the numerator by 2, and I could divide that 20 by 2, and I would get 3 plus or minus, well, the 2 divided by 2 would just be 1, so I would just have the square root of 39, 1 times the square root of 39 over 10. And you could leave it together like that, or you could split that into 3 plus the square root of 39 over 10, comma, 3 minus the square root of 39 over 10. But leaving it together is also valid.